That's one thing I've learned from everything, to be fair, is to not be a miserable cunt. Because I was a miserable bastard when I was on that methadone, mate. Miserable. I probably started smoking when I was 8. That's just because I hung around with older people anyway, around the area in St Mary's and stuff, you know. Just as kids do, I guess, in England. Around the world, actually, it don't change anywhere you go, actually. There's kids smoking everywhere around the world. It's not selective. But that always leads on to people then smoke weed. And then if you start smoking weed, then you're going to go to a dealer's house, and that one dealer might just sell weed, and then the next one will have coke, and then there'll be people doing that. It wasn't until I probably hit secondary school, man. Obviously you change when you get older anyway, and you get your angst and everything like that. And just when you think you've got just your general problems, the police kick down the door and raid your house, arrest you, your mum, your dad, and you're like, what the fuck? You know what I mean? It throws you a little bit, and probably when that's probably the worst time, because I had to fucking help my mum. My dad was in prison. He was on suicide watch, you know what I mean? Like, he thought he'd lost everything, you know. So I sort of found myself like on my own at like the age of 14, 15, you know what I mean? Like, and I ended up moving in with a group of BMXers and stuff like that. And it was actually one of the best times of my life, you know. They all played punk music, you know, and sort of like made me the sort of person who I am now. You know, led me down paths that I shouldn't have went down. But, you know, I look at it like the journey I've taken now, maybe the correct one would have ended up with me dead. Could have been a car accident, could have been killed by someone, you know what I mean? All the dangerous stuff I've done, I'm still here now. The first times, you want to know how I got into it, we were like at the head of the free party scene. And we were going all the rave parties like with the massive medical grade nitrous oxide canisters, 2,500 cubic litre ones, bags of balloons, and we're selling £1 for a small, £2 for large. We even got in the Guardian paper, like my friend Johnny was mentioned, like he was naming that one mentioned, but him and Big Nick, it was like 2 entrepreneurs on the side of a motorway with a massive, and like, I can remember this so vividly because it was a start when I started doing a little bit of opium. And I should have read the signs there when I was snorting original Subutex. It was a drug I used to give addicts. And like my good friend Keith Cressy, bless him, he died of a heroin overdose. They left him outside a house, face down, just to die on the street. And he was in a band called Japan with one of my good mates, Lee Kistenbury. And it was weird. It was sort of like a newer group that got involved with an older group that was sort of in that sort of background, you know what I mean? And as well as going to the free parties and doing loads of speed and drugs, acid, and then the come down, we'd buy opium and then just start doing that. And that's how it spiraled out of control, I think. Mainly because of my greed for drugs and just to be as fucked up as I could all the time. It led off of just smoking it. First I smoked it for about 6 or 7 years. That's heroin, mate, if I didn't mention it. It's different when you start proper using it and you start injecting and stuff. Like it's weird. I don't know what sort of feeling. It's almost like you can't discover it. Like it takes a little while for it to sort of like connect with your soul in a weird way, because it won't work. Like it works. It either, you know what I mean? People obviously that's how people die. But if you're already a user and you do it, it's like the transition from smoking it to doing that is totally different. And the thing that made it really bad for me, I started using the white as well, the crack, and I snowballed it. Speedballs they call them in America, and that's what I'd use. Like you'd cook up the gear, put the lump of crack in it, and then do it like that, and it's a hell of a buzz. But it'd make you throw up. As soon as you do it, you'd be like, the rush was so intense that you'd be sick. But then you'd have this mad rush, intense, almost like anxiety sometimes, you couldn't handle it. And then all of a sudden you'd be like, the heroin would kick in, you know what I mean? And then you'd be like, okay, I feel normal again now. Or normal for that frame of mind, you know what I mean? Like, but then there's other times you do it and the gear's so crap. That's how lots of people die, because the gear would be really shit. And then all of a sudden someone would bring in some really good stuff and people do what they normally do. That's why people die when they come out of prison, because of their tolerance, you know what I mean? Like, God, if I did it now, I'd drop dead. You know what I mean? Like, I'd just be like... fucking hell, every time you go and meet them people, dude, like the thing is, they leave you waiting 6 hours somewhere. They're like, say they're 15 minutes away and they're still coming back from London or still on their way to London to go pick up. You know what I mean? They leave you there for hours. They just don't give a shit. I've been there when there's been 50 people waiting for someone. And I mean, imagine 50 desperate heroin addicts running to one person. I literally used to pin him against the wall. And like, it was like a fucking, like a Vietnamese betting house or something. You know what I mean? Like people chucking their money for this. And if you're at the back, mate, if they run out, that was it. You wait there for 6 hours, they ain't coming back. They won't come back. They've just made like 3 grand. They're not coming back. They won't be back on until tomorrow. You know what I mean? The control they have over people, like their voices almost become addictive. Like the phone call, it isn't even about the drug. It's like when you get the money and you're like, yes, I'm going to feel better soon. And then when it rings and they pick up and they give you a location, like that whole rush of it, that's what makes it even more intense. And that's what makes it even more deeply involved in your life. This is how deep it gets. Like wood pigeons, you know the that they do, right? In the summer or in early winter, right? If I used to hear that about 7 in the evening, 6, 4 if it's winter or whatever, that was a trigger for me, like to go in. Like even if I'd used, for some reason, them triggers, you have these really weird triggers like keywords, or you'll see something on the floor, or you have a thought about something. And these triggers are incredibly powerful. I can see all this now, like, and I've got no triggers, like nothing could ever make me do it again, you know what I mean? There's the pain, you know what I mean? 15 years of killing you, effectively, slowly committing suicide, basically. You know, and in amongst that, I actually committed suicide. And I took 100 metrazapine, like 20 olanzapine, like a load of diazepam, and fucking smoked a fuckload of gear. Went to my dad's ex's house. This is like, she lived there, just across the other side there. I didn't tell anyone, just fucking went to sleep on the sofa. I can remember a snippet of waking up, and then I was told that I started foaming out my mouth. And like by the time I got to the hospital, I was nearly dead. And I died for 6 minutes. Then I was on a life support machine for 2 weeks. My whole body went black, where I had no oxygen, you know what I mean? It's like fucked up. The scary thing about it is you can make someone until they're blue in the face to give it up or whatever, you know what I mean? Scream at them to death, put them in rehab, send them to prison or whatever. But the thing is, they won't stop it until something happens, you know what I mean? And thankfully it's happened for me. My little boy, because when my little boy was first born, I was still pretty bang on it. I was probably at the height of my habit. It's embarrassing to say it, but you know what I mean? Like, she was there, like in labour, and I had been on a night shift, but that's no excuse because I was still fucked up on Valiums and fucking all sorts of mad shit. And I nodded off, she woke me up to pass a glass of water. I got up, drank my cup of tea and went back to sleep. Like, I was there, but just, like, until I look at it now on an outside perspective from a clear mind, like, you don't understand what you were doing, like, to the people, you know what I mean? It broke me to the point where I think I hit rock bottom, and I did it so bad. And he looked at me one day in my eyes, and he looked at me he's got the most beautiful eyes anyway, but he just looked at me just with this look. It just, something switched, and I just stopped taking that completely. Just carried on with my medication, and that's what's led up to now. It's not selective for any user. That pain's there, and if you ask anyone that's deeply involved in that drug, they don't want to be in it. They don't want to be involved with it, but they're petrified, because the thing is you can get clean, you get these amazing ideas in your head, what you want to do, how you want to live your life. But when you come out of it, you've burned every fucking bridge you've ever had in your life. You've pissed off every fucking person, you know what I mean? And I've pissed a lot of people off, you know what I mean? I've done things I regret. Somehow I'd always sort of owned it and just was like, well, I've fucking done it, you know what I mean? I've done it now, lump it or leave it, you know what I mean? And that tactics kind of work for me. And as well, skateboards help. Like I said, most people haven't got this. I have.
Not at all!
This is another thing that sparked me to completely get clean off of methadone, right? I'd been clean for four plus years off of heroin, but the methadone was just a key part of my life that I just couldn't get rid of. And it's funny, I turned up there to coach my mate Clayton and one of the guys that I coach, and there were two kids there, and they were sort of like watching how I was doing it, and I saw two blokes sit on the bench, and I just presumed it was two dads with their kids. And anyway, I you know, saying hello to me, and they come up to me, it's like, you look like an angry, friendly drug dealer, right? And it took me by surprise. And these kids, anyway, towards the end of the session, I just started skating with him. He wanted to learn how to drop in. And these blokes kept looking at me a little, not funny, but they were looking at like a little bit amazed. And anyway, this kid, he wouldn't drop it, he kept taking his foot off. So I was like, look, I put my arms out. I was like, hold my arms here. When you drop in, right? And he reached out to go and to do it, and he grabbed my arms, right? And he dropped in, learned how to do it. These blokes were so eager to go to me. They said, do you know what you've just done? He said, that boy's got no parents, he lives in an orphanage. He says he does not speak to anyone, and he does not let anyone touch him. What you've done today has changed that boy's life. And for me, that fear makes me choke up now thinking about it, because that poor little kid, he's got no one. He's got no mum, no dad, you know what I mean? And he's at a park with two people that are just paid to look after him. You know what I mean? It broke my heart, you know what I mean? So I think that was the final push for me, man. There's something when you look at a skateboarder, when he's skating, nothing else matters, you know. Maybe when you first start, you're constantly looking around to see if people are watching you skate, looking at the good ones, like we call it a ball bag. And like you don't hear people say it anymore, but if you get someone, they do a trick and they're like looking in everyone's eyes, they're like, ball bag, you know, it's a bit of a Southampton thing, but you know, I try to keep that going, but it don't seem to catch anymore, you know. It was tough in the 90s growing up as a skater, so the people from them era, they know how difficult it was, you know, being bullied, you know, because there's like three skaters in my whole entire secondary school. And, you know, I think that inspired me more to keep skating, you know, just being more of an outcast, you know, it's always better. And that's what attracted me to it, you know, because I've always been a bit weird. I got bullied at school, you know what I mean? Because how I dress now is how I've always been, you know what I mean? I've always listened to music, inspired by my dad, you know. The main reason I still do it is just 'cause it's a part of my life, you know. It's the people you meet, the places you go, you know. It's endless. The friendships, you can go to a city and not know anyone, go to a skate park, by the end of the day, you'll have everything you need in that city. You get your good and your bad eggs, you know what I mean? But the majority of skaters, you go anywhere and they're cool, you know. The message I want to send really is, if you're going to do it, you're just going to have to do what you got to do to be able to live your life, really. You know, if you want it enough, you will achieve it. And I think that I'm a record of that, because I wanted to be clean. I wanted what is normal, but you know, it's a good concept. I wanted a normal life, the gift of time, the gift to be able to do this. I wouldn't have been able to do this because I was about to go out and score, and mates would have left me waiting around for a couple of hours, you know what I mean? It just wouldn't have worked, you know. Just being able to make everything fit into place how I want it to be. I can manipulate my own reality now, so that's a buzz for me.